Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the program. We're so glad you joined us on Act 3 today. The sun is still out on this very fine Monday, and we are delighted to have with us in the Zoom booth someone who's going to make summer even more fun. So Nick Rhodes is with us, and he's with the Nanaimo Big Band Festival coming up early in September. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a gas. Hey, Nico, welcome to the program. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you. I'm enjoying the sunshine myself. I've already been out in the hills hiking, so I'm thrilled.
Woot, woot. You know,
Woot woot.
anytime we can get outside in that, it really makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? Hey,
Truly.
Nico, tell us a little bit about the Big Band Festival coming up here in Nanaimo.
Oh, there's so much to say. Well, first of all, we've got 3 whole days of music. We've got an entire weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this first weekend of September, and we've got a whole whack of great musicians. We actually have several different groups playing. We're headlining Ken Levine on Friday night, doing the music of Frank Sinatra. He has a show called Let Me Be Frank. He's going to be playing with the Vancouver Island Repertory Jazz Orchestra, which includes musicians from all over Victoria and Nanaimo and just the whole island in general. And the openers that night, we actually have some local musical sort of up-and-comers. We have Tegan Cooch and Ty Kosh, who are going to be playing as well, and they're sort of local young phenoms. I'm not sure, people might not have heard of them yet, but if you haven't, you will. Tegan is a graduate from VIU, the local jazz program here, and Ty is an alumni of the BC boys choir. But both of these singers, incredible talent. So they're going to be singing with the big band as well. That's just Friday. So I mean, right off the bat, that's an evening and a half. You also have, there's going to be a little bit of the music of Count Basie that night presented by the big band as part of the opening set. So
Love Count Basie. Love,
I
love,
know,
love, love.
right? I mean, it's just, I mean, he was a real trailblazer. I mean, he set a lot of things in motion, set a lot of standards for the music, and defined an entire era of what we sort of relate to musically, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're gonna have a 17-piece band for that night, and we're gonna be playing all the hits, 1 O'Clock Jump, April in Paris, Shiny Stockings, Little Darlin', all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I personally know a lot of the musicians in this band. I can vouch for them. They are phenomenal. So that's just our Friday. That's just getting us started. And like I said, Ken's going to be singing the music of Frank Sinatra. You know what you're going to be hearing. You're going to be hearing "Fly Me to the Moon." You're going to be hearing "Sway."
The classics, all the best stuff.
Classics. And for anyone who's too young, where they're like, "Who's Frank Sinatra? Doesn't Michael Bublé sing those songs?" Yes,
totally.
Older Michael Bublé, pre-Michael Bublé. So, all of that repertoire, and they're going to be doing real classic charts, real classic arrangements of these things. So I think it's going to be quite evocative, quite a good night. On the 3rd, on the Saturday, we have a whole different lineup of musicians. So on the 3rd, we're going to start. This is actually the 3rd is accompanied by an orchestra or a jazz orchestra that I've put together of local musicians.
Oh, right on.
I had no say in the naming. It's called the Nico Rhodes Jazz Orchestra. I swear that wasn't my idea. I'm not that much of a narcissist, but no. We've got a whole, again, local musicians ranging from Vancouver, from Victoria, all the way to Comox, Courtenay area. So it's a hand-picked group. For that ensemble, it's a little bit different than a traditional big band setup. We actually have a small string section. So it's almost like a cabaret show band. It's kind of in a different vein. But we're going to be opening with our set Night and Day, which is a sort of a tribute to the Great American Songbook. We'll have Josh Holloway and Bua, who are 2 local, again, young up-and-comers.
Fabulous. I love Josh. Josh.
You know Josh. I mean,
I do. You know what? And I think that now that you and I are talking,
yeah.
I used to attend Unity, and if I remember correctly, you played a lot, and you played a lot with Josh.
All the time.
All the time.
Josh and I actually taught Josh when he was like 11 years old until he was about 16.
Lord.
On and off. And so to see what he's doing now and the work he's doing, he's actually got a great new album. If you've checked that out, it's called.
We definitely want to pitch that.
Yeah, it's called. Of course, right now I can't remember the name. It's called.
That's
Oh
okay. You know
my
what? It will.
goodness.
We'll find the name, and when we find it as well, because if for our listeners know that if they miss this broadcast, they can also, subscribe and enjoy us on YouTube. So we'll make sure that that information for Josh's album is actually in the chat box, so that we don't
Amazing.
lose that.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
It is. I do remember. It's called Wonder. Wonder is the name of the album,
Wonder.
and it is a wonder. It's a wonderful album. But that's a little off track. Yeah. So Josh, and Bua. Have you ever heard Bua sing?
I have. Fantastic.
What a voice, right?
Really? Yeah.
I met Bua through a mutual friend, and I blind hired him for a show at the Port Theatre, and I have never been struck by such a powerful voice. It's just
Incredible.
Wonderful human being, incredible talent. So they're going to be doing our focus on Saturday night is for the opener is this American Songbook repertoire. So we're going to be singing songs like I'm Old Fashioned, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Night and Day, Blue Skies, things like that. But the cool thing about this evening is that the entire Saturday evening is all original, new original arrangements. So these are all arrangements that are being crafted for this performance, one time only. If you miss them, you blink, you miss them, they're gone. So these are being custom. I'm writing these specifically for Bua and Josh and for our headliner. So the artists are getting a bit of a say on how they're interpreting the songs. So it's not as traditional as the Friday night. There might be a bit more experimentation, a little bit more ideas there. Yeah, so that'll be fun. And then the headliner on our Saturday evening is the incomparable Joelle Rabou, or as I occasionally call her Mom, but I try not to be too public about it. But and I'm biased, but she is one of the greatest voices I've ever heard, one of the best voices around, and she's going to be celebrating the release of a new album actually that we just finished producing, and so this will be our first time sort of publicly having that album out here for people to check out and to listen and to purchase. And we'll be performing some of the songs from that album, which are like a whole range of material, but we're focusing on sort of the cabaret era, like the European American cabaret songs, so works of Edith Piaf, Irving Berlin, Jodassin, Candor and Ebb. So things like La Vie en Rose, things like Maybe This Time from Cabaret, or Cabaret from Cabaret for anyone who's a musical theater fan. So that's going to be pretty incredible. I mean, Joelle has traveled. I mean, she's performed all over the world. She's performed for royalty. She's won a bazillion awards. Yeah, her and Ken. I mean, their resumes go on for days.
Yeah,
so you can't go wrong. And then Sunday we have a bit of a mixed bag. So Sunday morning we actually we're having kind of a matinee sort of situation. We start at 11 a.m. I should let you know that those other shows on Friday and Saturday start at 5:30 p.m. for the opener, 7 p.m. for the headline. And
where are they going to be hosted? Are we doing it at the Port or
downtown in the Maffeo Sutton Park?
Gotcha.
Yes.
Oh, so it's actually at the park.
It's at the park, and so you can dance outside. You can get your feet moving. You can stand up. Wow. You can wiggle. You can Lindy hop. You can do whatever you want.
Wow, that's incredible.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Because I mean, it's one thing to listen to this music in a beautiful theater, and I always love a beautiful theater. But to be able to get up and move and dance
outside.
Yeah,
right? You want to get up, you want to move, you want to be with your friends, you want to enjoy the outdoors. This is when the evenings are still so nice and crisp, and that beginning of the change. So, it's
that perfect time where it's still warm outside, but it's not too hot. You get those nice, end of summer.
The bugs have gone away.
Exactly. Get shoo. Yeah, 100%. No, I think that it's going to be a really beautiful atmosphere for the festival. I'm really happy to have that opportunity. Sure. So yeah, on Sunday we have 3 bands coming together. Okay. So we have at 11 a.m. some guy named Nico Rhodes. Oh, Nico Rhodes. I guess that's me.
Name?
I guess that's me. Gosh, I'm playing a lot this weekend. No, so I'll be playing with I'll be playing with my trio. Just a small group. We're just going to be playing some straight ahead jazz. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then at 12:30 we have the awesome Dockside Drive, who are they're a swing show band. They've done theater tours, festival tours, music in the style of 1930s all the way to original, like current day, but arranged in like an original swing style. And they're an 8-piece band. And they'll do songs by Ray Charles, Irving Berlin, George Gershwin, Duke Ellington, even the Beatles, but like all kinds of cool reimaginings from what I've heard. So that's going to be super cool. And our headliner at 2 p.m. on Sunday is the Vancouver Island Repertory Jazz Orchestra, who's accompanying Ken on Friday night. They're going to have a special guest, James Danderfer, who is a clarinet phenom, and they're going to be doing a bunch of music from like Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Tommy Dorsey, featuring James on the clarinet. So that's just going to be like old school wizardry right there. I know. I'm
fantastic. I know.
I'm super. I'm excited for all of this. I love all of these artists, and I'm I get to play with these people, but I'm also huge fans. I'll admit, I'm on both sides of that fence, but I'm secretly, just squeeing. I'm so excited at the idea of hearing some sweet jazz clarinet. I'm like, oh, it's just such a treat.
It is. It's fantastic. Especially when it's played well, right? When it's played really well, you can't beat it.
You can't beat it. It's such a cool sound. And James, I've never met James, but I've heard his playing, and he's just phenomenal. So as a clarinetist myself, I'm just like, I am in heaven hearing that this is happening. I'm so grateful. So that, and then on top of that, this is also, there's a bit of a kickback. $2 from every ticket sold is kicked back to the Marianne Turley Memorial Fund. So there's going to be some support for our community there, because a lot of these musicians have connections to the symphony, and Marianne and the Turleys have done a lot in that.
They have. The whole Turley family has done so much for our community. Jim, of course, still a councilman. He does incredible work for supporting us. And Marianne, I don't know how long it's been now since she's passed, but her legacy lives on every minute of the day for our communities. It's a true gem to have had them as part of our community and continue to have them in this legacy project.
Truly.
So listen, I'm curious about the tickets as they go right now. First of all, where can people get the tickets? How much are they? And can people get them at the door as well at the park as you go into the venue? How is that all being done? Do you have any idea?
That is a very good question. I do think I know how to do this. So I mean, I realize that I haven't bought a ticket, so I don't know.
Well, you're a musician, so that makes it part of it, right?
I know that you can go to NanaimoBigBandFest.com. That's definitely one way you can go at it. There are 3-day festival passes where you just buy a ticket and you get the whole weekend. And I'm just looking to see how much those are right now, because of course I didn't have that written down anywhere.
Well, no worries at all.
I am.
So listen, while Nico is actually looking for that, this is a perfect segue, perfect time for people to go grab a piece of paper and a pen, because obviously you're going to want to participate. You're going to want to go to this show. I love entertainment when it's outside. And I think that most of our community, I love the idea of the Sunday having that kind of matinee and all of that stuff going on, because during that matinee, people that wouldn't normally be able to get out in the evening are able to go. And so my favorite thing to do when my son was a little boy was that I would take him to the Sunday Symphony. And so he would dress up in his little suit. And we would go to, in those days, we lived on the mainland, and, I would take him, and he loved going to the symphony. And I think that it's a great opportunity for people to bring their kids, to introduce them to the symphony, to introduce them to jazz, to introduce them to great music.
100%.
Go get your paper and a pen.
All right. So, I'm ready here. I've got the info for you.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Tell us.
Through the miracle of the internet, I have acquired the information. So first of all, like I said, you can go to NanaimoBigBandFest.com, and there's a ton of information there about all the different acts, times, location, everything you need to know if you're wanting to kind of poke around. There is a tickets page, so you can buy your tickets online. I don't know about in person. I'm sure there might be something, but I don't have any information, and there's no indication here. I know our tickets are being sold through the Port Theatre. So if you go to the Nanaimo Big Band Fest website and you click on the festival tickets page, you will be brought to the Port Theatre. And there are a myriad of options. So you can get a 3-day pass. And a 3-day pass, there's a VIP, which will get you 2 CDs, including Joelle's new CD. The 3-day pass is $149, and then that's for the VIP. With the free CD. Oh, it rhymes. And then the 3-day pass, bring your own chair. I love that. It's like your instructions are in your ticket price. That's only $79. So 3 shows with 3 headliners and 3 openers for $79, which I have to admit is quite the bargain. And then for your single days, there's single day family passes, single day VIP passes, single day tickets, and a single day students. And those range from $20 for the student price all the way to $70, which is a family ticket, which will get you 2 adults and 2 children. So again, if you want to bring the kids, I know a lot of the times ticket prices can be a bit of a hurdle for people, right? If you got, you want to bring the kids along, or you don't want to have to get a babysitter. Well, there you go. So, otherwise, like a single day ticket is $34. So really, the family pass is 2 adult tickets for $70, and you get 2 kids. So the kids are essentially coming for free. It's like $1 per kid.
Phenomenal. Yeah. That's amazing.
Pretty cool.
And I do really recommend families to come and do this. And there's plenty of parking at Maffeo Sutton. There's lots of opportunity there for people to find a parking spot, especially if you get there early. Make yourself comfortable. Enjoy the day. Make a day of it. Have a picnic. Bring some fun stuff. Make sure you bring water, because you are still outside. So we want to hydrate.
Always.
But at the end of the day, this is a wonderful time. Okay, Nico, we're going to come back to that in a few minutes, because we're going to want to go over a little bit more of that closer to the, as we get towards the end of the show. I think it's important that we revisit that in case people have just tuned in. Folks, if you have just tuned in, you are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes, happy to be your host. In the Zoom booth with me today is Nico Rhodes. We're talking about Nanaimo Big Band Festival. It's going to be such a hoot. Nico, you've been a musician in our community for a really long time. I do recall meeting you way back when. Let's talk about what's been happening for you as a musician in the last while. How are things going? I heard you've been traveling the world, or at least in Canada at any rate. What's happening?
Yes. Well, I've been incredibly blessed recently, and I just want to say, before I say anything, I need to say that, because musicians during the pandemic, I mean, for everyone during the pandemic, but particularly for our artistic community, it has been a difficult go.
So hard.
And I have definitely, I've been very lucky. I'm surrounded by some incredibly, hardworking, ambitious, generous artists and managers and directors and things like that. So lately, I've been kind of all over the place, if I'm being honest. I just came back from a week in New Brunswick and a week in Montreal, touring out there with Joelle Rabou, my mom, who will be in the Big Band Festival. And we were just out there having a great time. We were at the International Esperanto Language Conference in Montreal. So that was its own special experience. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, and New Brunswick was a hoot. I think the Maritimes are definitely my second favorite place in Canada after our West Coast. And I actually also had the pleasure recently, just the week before, I was in the Yukon, teaching at the Yukon Summer Arts Academy, teaching film scoring and jazz and various other classes. So I feel like I haven't been home. I guess I haven't.
You haven't? Wow. Yeah.
It's been a very busy summer, and then performing with my own groups as well, performing with different singers like Tegan Cooch, occasionally trying to get the odd thing with Josh Holloway, who's our mutual friend.
Yes.
And also working on this is sort of into the future, but there was a project by Nanaimo Sings, which is an organization that sort of gets all these different Nanaimo choirs collaborating, and they recently commissioned a song search and a commission of arrangements where they had about 8 or 9 original arrangements created for local songs written by local songwriters. Incredible. Written for mass choir. So we just wrapped the first layer of preparations on that project, which was all the arranging and selection. So that's also been really exciting. We're doing some readings. We're just starting to kind of get things moving. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's been busy. Not too long ago, we had a show at the Port Theatre with the VIS with the symphony playing Tonight Piaf, the Joelle's Piaf show, which was a huge success. We toured that up and down the island, and right now I'm just kind of focusing on some personal projects, playing a lot of catch up. When you're away and you come home, it's like the paperwork stacked up to the ceiling. There's phone calls, there's messages. Yeah, and trying to just start a lot of community initiatives. I have some ambitions to start some local sort of recreational music programs for seniors,
Fantastic.
and just try to connect with more local artists. Actually, playing this Friday. Oh, actually, no, that's it'll be in the yeah playing a bunch of different shows with people at the OCQ in the Old City Quarter, and yeah, just keep him busy. Like I said, I've been very lucky. I know a lot of musicians who have been, things are picking up for a lot of people right now.
Sure. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
there's sort of this thirst to like, okay, let's get some live music going. Let's get things going. But it's tricky, right? We're still trying to balance that, and there's still an anxiety, I think, for a lot of artists where it's like, is is this gig going to go ahead? And is it
Yes.
going to be canceled? Are we going to be?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
every gig that is successful is adding to our collective confidence. I believe it's
I
it's
agree.
cumulative.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really important as well. What I'm noticing anyway from the music sector or sector, pardon me,
Yeah.
is the right now, of course, more often to be outside the better. We know
Yes.
that, COVID is not gone. And so of course, everybody is being extra careful at this time. But I
Mhm.
think that more and more people are starting to feel safe again and they're ready to come out and listen to some really good tunes.
I
Right.
agree. And this summer is actually being, I think it's sort of being the beginning of that revitalization where, like you said,
Yeah.
people feel more comfortable outside. And I have huge respect for people's personal boundaries around this. I mean, everyone's different too, right? Everyone's
Everyone's
got their
different.
own who's in their surroundings. There might be someone who's fragile, they might be older, they might be
Yeah.
compromised in some way. Mad respect. So no, I've enjoyed several performances at several festivals up and down the island, and the atmospheres have been absolutely electric.
Of course.
It's just
Yeah,
been delightful. There's such a celebration, such a celebratory feeling, where the audiences and the performers really feel, you can feel that we're reunited with each other. And
absolutely.
yeah, there's that
I
feeling
bet you,
of,
what did
yeah.
you miss the most about the COVID piece? Like for yourself, just out of curiosity. I mean, I know
Mhm.
everyone's experience has been different, but out of curiosity, what's been the thing that you have missed the most?
It's interesting. Initially it was just pure panic. It was just pure financial panic where it was
Of
like, okay, I,
course.
I had 300 shows and now I have zero. What do I do now? Um,
Yes.
but I think that as the time has worn on, the thing that I've missed the most is just the sense of community. I think
Yeah.
it's much to what everyone else has experienced, whether you're locked in your
Mm.
home, whether you're not able to visit your elder at a care facility, whether you're whatever it may be,
Yeah.
at various degrees and along this path that those
Sure.
difficulties we've had. For me, the art scene, the music scene, the theater scene, the creative scene in Canada, you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody, right? It's really quite small at the end of the day. I mean, we're spread out, but there's a very core group of people, and you don't realize that seeing them, albeit intermittently, different people at different times, it's like having a class reunion every week, right? You're always seeing someone, you're always reconnecting with someone, you're
Yeah.
always able to check in on one another and
Yeah.
support one another when someone's having a tough go. Everyone knows, everyone's there for them, everyone steps up. And the feeling is that we were, and I think I can speak collectively here, the feeling was that we were sort of fractured from each other. And so there was a
Yes.
lot of digital hand holding, a lot of reaching out in the dark and just being, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you still playing? Are you still singing? And we have lost a lot of artists. It's tragic in a way because there are a lot of incredibly talented people who had to make some tough choices, and I don't know if a lot of those people are going to be coming back. So that's the thing
Yeah.
that I definitely miss, is just the sense of family and community, and that sense of communal support that exists within the framework of the arts community in Canada. Thankfully, it's sort of the harder the blow, the more people come together, right? And so
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that we've been tending to the artistic garden that is Nanaimo in a really beautiful way as a
Yeah.
community. I think people have been leaning in, and walls that may have existed previously, even grievances and beefs between artists, I think, have been dropped because there's a lot of like, hey, there's just no time to be petty.
No,
There's no
no, no.
time to be separate. So people are coming together in new and surprising ways too.
Have you noticed a difference between your style of music pre-COVID to now post-COVID, or not necessarily post-COVID, but have you
Yeah.
shifted your genre in any way?
On several ways, yeah, in several dimensions. On the one hand, there's just a professional shift where I used to focus considerable efforts on conducting and arranging for musical theater. So I'd spend 200 to 300 shows a year conducting
Yeah,
shows across Canada, and that was a main professional focus. And of course, that affects how you play
of
because you're
course.
playing certain genres of music. You're also playing in theater. You have to play it the exact same way every time because there are
Yeah,
dancers and lights and
of
singers and
course.
such.
Yeah,
Since
the
then,
choreograph.
or yeah, exact choreo.
Mhm.
Since that, during the
Yeah.
pandemic, I started an online business writing music for podcasts and video games and different D&D characters, people's own
Oh,
private D&D
wow.
parties. Yeah, and it's called obpmusical.com, and it's got a whole whack of different outlets that have been tremendously successful. So that has changed my perspective to a lot of composing and arranging, a lot of digital media too, like digital
Sure.
music media, because not being able to get together with 20 musicians and try something with them, all of a sudden you're composing digitally because you're at home, and the tools for that are tremendous. It never replaces the real thing, and I'm a huge advocate for hiring as many real musicians as possible, but I've learned a lot in there that my creative focus has changed. And I think that the main sort of philosophical difference has just been one of it. There's been a returning for me to a sort of a more, you know, prime state of my relationship to music. So
Yes.
where things might have been more demonstrative, and there was a lot of, you get wrapped up in the show business of things. You get wrapped up in how you're being perceived, how you
Of
might be
course.
impressed,
Of
who you might
course.
be impressing, all that.
For sure.
And lately I've just really had a feeling of just wanting to just play in the most sincere, most, honest, even simple, if it is,
Yeah.
manner. So I think that that's actually affecting how I play in a good way. And there's a gratitude. So now, instead of, you do come to take things for granted. You do come to take showing up and playing for 1,000 people for granted. And suddenly you're playing for 5 people, and you're really connecting with each person because you're realizing how special and important this is, and how important it is not only for you as an artist, but for the fabric, for the social fabric, and for the people involved in their happiness
Yeah.
and their spiritual health. So yeah, just a deeper awareness and a deeper connection overall. So I'm strangely grateful, trying to make lemonade out of lemons on this one, but I am strangely grateful for this time of reflection and isolation. It has proved fruitful on some level.
I'm so delighted to actually hear you say that in this context, because I do recognize that for a lot of people, music has become, well, not become, it
Mm-hmm.
by nature, it brings us back to memory. It brings us
Mm-hmm.
back to soul connections. It brings us back to people. It brings us
Mm-hmm.
back to, our home life, our work life, our friends life. Like I can think of songs very clearly in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
some of which you spoke of earlier when we started talking about the Nanaimo Big Band Festival. They that give us that connection. And I think that for some people that during COVID, it was really important for them to hear those tunes, but it's also been really important for them to create their new experiences and new
Mm-hmm.
tunes that are a result of it, right? I think that there's some value in having to have this time period where we've had to shut off what we knew in lieu of learning who we could become.
I think that's beautifully put, and I think there is a reflection in terms of how people consume and relate to artistic media, like to music, in the sense, like, much to what you just said, the idea that all of a sudden, when I think that we have a certain degree, it's funny, there's a balance, right,
Of
between
course.
nostalgia and getting stuck. You know, uh,
Yeah.
there's a great book by Aaron Copland, the great composer, where he talks about, there's a danger to nostalgia, which of course we're having a big band festival. That's the definition of nostalgia. But the idea is, celebrating what has happened is so
Yes.
important, right? So tradition is so important, and enjoying nostalgia and losing yourself and having those memories and recreating those moments. It's so powerful. In fact, I was doing some work with seniors during the pandemic that in that line, and I was always amazed at the effect it would have. But what's interesting is I think that perhaps for some people, perhaps not for all, but for some people who are, avid music listeners or just passive music listeners, there's an awareness that may have cropped up for some people that I've noticed talking to people, where all of a sudden, you can't go out and hear all these new bands. You're not hearing new recordings crop up. You're not hearing new projects crop up. You're not seeing new, really, right? Especially on a local and a national scene, really things really slowed down. And I think that when you notice the absence of something more than you notice its presence. And so the absence of the musical community, the absence of new music, the absence of new projects and new creations, I think that touched people. And I hope, my hope is that when people move forward in the community, and whether that's a political thing or a community initiative, or how they relate to their different levels of government or private enterprise, that they consider what that feeling was, that feeling of absence, because we have a responsibility, right? With great liberty comes great responsibility, and we have responsibility as a community, as a society, to support our artists and their endeavors, because they enrich our lives. And so the absence of that, like losing that pulse, to me at least, I think that there were some people that really took note and went, wow, I take this for granted. I turn on Spotify and I can just listen to something, or I can turn on the TV. Like the common joke that I heard a lot of, it was with Netflix, but I had a couple people that I knew saying, well, they're handing out money, and who's taking the money? And I'm like, well, I know some actors who are taking that money. Oh, well, they should get a job. And I'm like, well, what are you doing right now when you go home at night, when you're locked at home for 12 hours? Well, I'm watching Netflix. And who do you think acted in those shows? So it's like, you want them to quit acting, but you want to keep seeing them on the television. Right. So I think for some, I think there was an awareness that maybe, was cultivated during this time, where it's like, if we just slowly let the arts deteriorate and slip away, if we keep, deprioritizing arts in our community, and I think that there is a lesson there, and I hope that we can extract that. I hope that people can take that mindfulness and move with that.
Brilliant. What you're leaving me with is the reminder that when I was back in school some years back, right? Yes. Last week is what I'm going to tell you, but it's not true.
It was 2 weeks ago. I know the truth. I know the truth. Yeah. Under
the truth. At the end of the day, what I recall is, as I was graduating from high school and moving myself into college and university, I was watching programs, particularly theater programs and music programs, getting cut slowly, methodically, over and over again. And now I really, really noticed the change in students as a whole when they are not subject to having these artistic influences in their life. I'm curious, you were saying that you were teaching in the Yukon and you were doing some work up there. Could we explore that a little bit? Have you seen some real changes in the way that people are accepting the arts in the school system again, or have you noticed any obstacles that have come up much stronger than they have in the past, or what's really the culture at this moment?
It's interesting. The Yukon is actually a very interesting sort of test subject in this conversation too, right? It's its own beast. But I think indeed. I think it's like all things. It's a double-edged sword. So I do think that there is a resistance that I've noticed. So obviously, there are economic considerations. There are all sorts of things that have been difficult for people. And I think that when the going gets tough, when things get difficult, particularly in our school system, in our institutions, we sort of look at what is necessary, and often the arts is viewed by many people, and hey, we're all allowed our opinions here, but the arts gets viewed as sort of non-essential. Sure. And of course, anyone who's ever traveled to any culture other than Canadian culture, you'll notice that one of the first thing that happens in any culture that is, particularly in any area that's like not as industrialized, the most prioritized thing is food and music, right? Like just above all. So non-essential. Anyway, I squint at that, but I think what's on the same token, where people are saying, hey, we're seeing that kids and elders and adults, just everyone, without access to music, entertainment, dancing, ways to express ourselves, ways to connect in that artistic realm, people suffer from that. It has real world consequences. It has physiological consequences when you really look at it. On the other hand, there are people who say, well, these are times of crisis. We have economic issues, we have medical issues. We need to cut something, so cut the band program. And to those people, I would say, like, there's many arguments to be made. One, for the resilience that artistic creation gives someone, giving someone the ability to create and to express artistically gives them resilience. When I was in my worst moments during the pandemic and utterly depressed, going to my piano, not as a musician, but as a human being, that's what kept me happy and sane and comfortable through the day. And for those of you who say, well, I can't play piano, well, putting on your favorite record, right? It's the same idea. It's stimulating the same part of your mind. So, if we want a healthy generation, if we want to grow a society where people can be resilient to crises like what we're experiencing, because it's never going to be an easy, life isn't easy. I think that the arts are really, unanimously important in this respect. And I think that there are more people saying we need to cut, and there are more people saying we need to support. I think both sides have gotten louder through this time.
Indeed.
The Yukon was fascinating because this artistic association has been going for 30 years, and it's basically community funded, municipally funded by the territory, and they fly Juno award winning musicians, nationally renowned musicians, people from all over the country to Whitehorse. And literally you had all ages. I had 7-year-old students, I had 6-year-old students studying everything from jazz improvisation to film scoring. Some of them were taking fiddle classes. Some of them were taking accordion classes. Some of them were taking songwriting classes. Some of them were taking, like, you name it, it was taught. And you could see the effect that has on people. Yeah. And of course, just also, on a side note, from a strictly economic standpoint, you look at something like the Maple Sugar Festival or the Blues Festival, and you do a quick calculation on how much money that generates in like the downtown
Absolutely.
core.
For sure. Huge.
Massive economic benefits. So,
huge.
So, on two sides there, right? Seeing a community investing in the education of not just children, but all ages, and seeing the joy, seeing the community, families coming out, big celebrations. It really, was there was a lot of vitality in the community while I was there. And you could tell that was going to stick around. So you get what you pay for. And then, of course, to anyone who poo-poos the economic viability of the arts, I would just say, well, if you've ever been to Granville Island on a Friday night, there's 400 people going to the arts club, and half of them went out to dinner that night. So
you betcha. Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, listen, I'm all for the arts. I'm an old theater person myself. I've been around it for my entire life. I get it. And I think for myself, one of the things that I recall the most that, I think is so important for young people, particularly, and I know for myself it was, is that when the world is so negative to a young person, right? A young person needs a venue for them to flourish and grow. And if it wasn't for the theater program in my high school, if it wasn't for the stuff that I went through and endured, because my world was not an easzy one. If it wasn't for that program, I don't think I would be the human being I am today. And I think a lot of people that feel that way. If you look at, even if you just look at the dynamics of a high school, you've got the jocks, you've got the nerds, you've got the arts kids, you've got the diversity within that microcosm in itself. And yet music touches every single one of the people that are in that room.
They all have their favorite album. They all do. Or their favorite song. Their
favorite song. Speaking of favorite songs, what's yours? Ha, gotcha.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
There are thousands. Okay, you know what? If I had to pick one, I've often thought, if I had one piece of music, it would be a 3-way tie. I'll give it a 3-way tie. I'll narrow it down to 3.
Sure, I'm in.
One would be the Meters from New Orleans. Would be their song "Fire on the Bayou," which is just this really funky, happy party song. It's really funky drums, and it's just kind of loose, and it just makes me happy. It makes me smile. Wow. That's one. The other two would be a totally out there jazz recording called "A Love Supreme" by John Coltrane, which was his sort of spiritual awakening, his homage to his perception of a higher power, and it's this 45-minute long saxophone epic. So that's one. And then the other one, which might be more familiar to people, is Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, explicitly or specifically, I should say, his second movement of his Seventh Symphony. That specifically conducted by Bruno Walter, because in my opinion, no one else conducts it at the right tempo, and that's a point of argument between so many musicians. But but you know, my nerd is showing here. But
I love it.
That piece of music is like, it might be
gold.
It's gold, and I can listen to it any time of the day, anywhere, and I cry from sheer joy, because it's so beautiful. I can put it on my phone and or big headphones or big speakers, it doesn't matter. It makes me cry.
It's always there for you. Isn't that
like
great?
a blubbering baby. I love it.
Yeah. You know, I appreciate that so much, because I know that every single one of us, right, we all have that song we turn to for so many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know, I just got to take a quick station identification here and like tune people in, because we've got some more things to talk about, and I just want to make sure everybody's on page with us. Hey, so glad you're here having this conversation on Act 3 with Nico Rhodes. We're talking tunes, and we're talking about the Nanaimo Big Band Festival that's coming up in early September. You know, there's a few things that are happening with our community that bring inspiration to us, particularly in times that we really need to be lifted into a higher place. And so there's a couple of things happening. Obviously, the Nanaimo Big Band Festival is coming up. And so that's one of those areas where you can be filled up. Another way you can be filled up is with Shine 2022 that is coming September the 17th. I encourage you, if you have not got your tickets yet, there are very few tickets left available. We have been selling them like crazy because we know that our community really needs this support. All of the money that happens from this particular event, a Shine 2022, is going into Nanaimo. It's going to help mental health and those with addictions, particularly with our youth. We really need to support this venture. So please, if you haven't already checked us out, make sure you go to www.togetherweshine.ca and find out more about what's happening in your community by staying tuned to Act 3 whenever you can. We are delighted to bring this to you not only on CHLY, but also on our YouTube station. So please make sure you like and subscribe and share, not only on Vancouver Island, but with the world. Some of the guests that we have tell us about all kinds of amazing things that touch us all in really fantastic ways. So thank you again for tuning in. I also invite you to tune into Shaw Cable 4, where Act 3 has its latest episode out. It will be the last episode of the season. Our new season will start later in September, early October, and we look forward to spending that time with you as well. So however way you listen to Act 3, we are delighted that you join us every Monday and through various different forums. So thanks again for being here. In the Zoom booth with me today is Nico Rhodes. Again, we're talking about the Nanaimo Big Band Festival. What a fabulous event coming up. You'll definitely want to get your tickets for that. And we're going to talk some more with Nico right now. Hello, welcome back. I am so happy you're here. You know, I always find it joyful to know that one of our local, you know, Nanaimoites is out there sharing incredibly good music, incredibly good opportunities for people to hear things and to, you know, take for themselves a new take on things, right? And so one of the things that I appreciated was earlier in our conversation, we were talking about the Saturday night gig. Mm-hmm. And how some of the musicians are going to be putting their own little twists on some classical favorites. So, you know, how much influence have you had in that, or have you had any of the influence with it, or were you the drum leader, pardon the pun, in getting people to get going on this?
I sort of hold an artistic director's position in this festival. So for that Saturday night, I'm in direct contact with all three of our singers, Bua, Josh Holloway, and Joelle Rabu. Of course, it's easy talking to Joelle because she's my mom, so it's a quick phone call. But overall, Mom. Yeah, thanks, Mom. Although, you know, she's so easy to work with. It's so much fun. But what's fun about that night, because Friday night we're doing these classic Frank Sinatra arrangements, and we are pulling from Frank's book. Like, we are playing, like, the Vancouver Island Repertory Jazz Orchestra are playing they're playing those arrangements basically verbatim, and it's gonna be just like super classic, super slick. But our Saturday night show with Joelle, it's really interesting because we are doing some really classic numbers. Like we're doing things like LAVIGNE Rose. We're doing things like What'll I Do? We're doing songs from Cabaret, the theater show Cabaret. But
Love it.
there
Love
is
it.
there's a balancing act going on where so I'm the arranger for the evening and the orchestrator, so I'm in charge of actually producing these arrangements, but having conversations with the singers, particularly Joël. There's this question of, like, for example, La Vie en Rose, the original Piaf, Edith Piaf recording, has basically a small big band with strings, and it's an iconic sound. It's an iconic recording. For that song, for example, I'm basically just taking what I'm hearing there and trying to replicate it as effectively as possible. But
For
then we have
sure.
other songs we're doing, like we're doing Bésame Mucho.
Oh,
I
I
know,
love
I
that
know.
song.
And there are so many classic arrangements to that song. But again, having conversations with the singers, Joelle and I sort of were thinking, this is a song that, because, especially when the material is so familiar, there's an opportunity to explore new ground. So we are, kind of creating a bit more of a modern, I won't give it away, but there's a bit of a James Bondy kind of vibe to it.
Lovely.
Super fun.
Yeah,
So there's a balancing act there. I think that about half the repertoire for Saturday night is being given a very traditional treatment, and then
sure.
the other half is a little bit more, a little more fun, a little more out there. So we're using old repertoire, classic repertoire, so people have a point to relate to. It's
Yeah,
not just all new and what are you getting into. You know the melody, you can sing it, right? You're already hooked. But then maybe it's coming at you from a different angle, So that's really fun, and I feel very blessed that the singers for the night have been very generous in just saying, as an arranger, go ahead, because
yes,
a lot of the
yes.
times you can get boxed in pretty quickly. I remember talking to my friend, my colleague, I should say. I'm not sure if we're friends. You can let me know if we're friends, Phil. Phil Dwyer, who's arguably Canada's finest musician, and we were talking about working as an arranger, and he said, Canadian Idol, they'll call you and say, okay, make it sound like that Frank Sinatra chart, but not too much like that Frank Sinatra chart, because we don't want to get sued, right? So there's those kinds of
Of
dynamics
course,
where
sure.
with this, these singers are just really generous. They're just, hey, what could be a fun way to interpret some of these classic songs? And some of them have their own ideas. I mean, Josh Holloway sings a beautiful version of I'm Old Fashioned, and it's usually sung very, I'm old fashioned, I love, it's quite up. And
Yeah.
it's actually done at this beautiful, like, little, like, jazz walls. I'm old fashioned, ba doom da da love. I can't sing, but it's really lovely. You just trust me that when
This is
Josh
great.
sings it, it'll make
Yeah, yeah,
you cry. But
yeah.
and then some real powerhouse numbers too. Some stuff that people are going to recognize, and like immediately the arrangement will be familiar. Like Bua is going to be singing, I think he's going to be singing "Feeling Good," which was originally made famous. I forget if it was Nina Simone or if it was a different singer, but of course everyone knows the modern arrangement with Michael Bublé, and so we're pulling a lot of stuff from that. So there's going to be some kind of classic moments where people are going to have that payoff of like, oh, I know how this goes, right? And it just hits you, and hearing it live and just having that energy.
Yes.
But then also some surprises. Like I say, that Besame Mucho is going to be a bit of a twist. And there's other songs like
Mm.
that where, for example, we're having also some smaller moments in the show. Like we're doing "Smile" by Charlie Chaplin,
Oh,
and that's
beautiful.
going to be stripped down to just jazz guitar and either accordion or melodica, depending on how my back is feeling. So something very different. And so, like I said, I'd like for people to be able to enjoy the material and not have to work too hard at keeping up with what's happening musically, or feel challenged, but at the same time get to appreciate that there's a lot of local creativity, a lot of world-class talent, and being allowing those artists, whether it's the vocalists or the instrumentalists or myself as an arranger, to express ourselves in a creative way. So there's this fun little counterplay there.
I'm actually curious because when you're talking about making arranged, is it easier to arrange on the piano, the guitar, the accordion?
Mm,
Like, is there an instrument that's easier to make the arrangements on, or what does
sure.
that look like for you?
That's a very good question. Originally, when I was younger, I would have immediately said the piano, and
Yeah,
the reason for that is it's like everything's laid out in front of you. In terms of, you can really map out, okay, up here, on my right side, that's going to be all the high winds. Okay, down here in the middle, that's going to be the low brass, and down here on the bottom, that's going to be the low strings, or whatever. You can kind of create a mind map of how they overlap and interlock.
Indeed, yeah, for sure.
But what I've noticed over the years, and again, this was something that my instructors when I was younger encouraged, and I was stubborn about, arranging away from the piano, the same way that maybe as a painter, you might not want to sit down and just start painting without imagining what you're going. Now, you might. Sometimes that's useful. But
absolutely.
Honestly, most of my arranging, the best instrument that I know are my feet. Going for a walk. I go for a walk. I start humming the melody in my head. I imagine the singer or the soloist or whoever it may be performing the piece. And then you just allow your imagination to fill in the blanks, because we all have a natural tendency, to fill the gap, so to speak.
Sure.
Right? So if someone said, I went for a walk, and then they said, I was eating pizza, anyone, immediately their mind's trying to connect, starting to go for a walk and getting to the pizza shop.
Right.
It's the same idea. So you're just allowing your imagination from a musical perspective to fill in that story. And then once you get a clear enough picture of, ooh, there's going to be saxophones here. Ooh, it's going to be this fast. Ooh, it's going to be this kind of a vibe or whatever. Then I come back to my office, and the piano is a utility, right? I can turn to it.
Sure.
I can check things. But I try to arrange as much straight out of my head as possible. And that percentage is getting higher as the years go by. And you can see it in the result. You can tell when you've arranged something as a piano player, because it sounds like a bunch of pianos being played. It's like, oh, the saxophone sounds like a bunch of piano players, and the trombone sounds like a bunch of piano players. Where when you allow your the human mind is so much more flexible, and you're not limited by what your fingers may choose to play or may feel most comfortable. You're just experiencing the sound on a visceral level and then trying to communicate that via the page. So I guess my imagination would be the instrument of choice these days.
I'm loving your imagination. I think that's I like gobsmacked, actually, because I recognize that for a lot of people, they may not consider it's their mind that starts it first, right?
Well,
it's their feet walking and
And for a lot of people, I talk to people and they say, well, that's a miracle, or that's genius. And it's like, no, it's not. It's 30 years of training. First of all, that's, whenever someone tells me I'm like, I really don't have a knack. It's been 30 years. Like, it's taken me long enough. But the thing is, I try to tell people, okay, like if someone's saying you the first line of "You Are My Sunshine," right? Yeah. You don't have to open your mouth. You could hear the rest of the song in your head. Completely. I don't know anyone who can't, right? So at that point, okay, you are now an arranger. You are now a composer. If you're able to hear that music in your head, then it's just a matter of expanding what you're hearing. And then, of course, being able to communicate that with other musicians. That's a technicality. But, really, that's it. It's the same way. It's like, if you can imagine a beginning and an end to a story, sure, you might not call yourself a writer, but you have the latent, potential. And I really am a firm believer that all people have a degree, various degrees of that latent potential. Now, some of us might be more predisposed for various reasons.
Sure.
Environmental, genetic, whatever. But fundamentally, like, we are all, as human beings, creative people. And a lot of the times, I think actually a lot of the misery that we experience is the denial of that nature.
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. I think that we're sometimes our own worst enemy and our own worst critic when it comes to that, right? We really are.
Every day. In my case.
Every day. And it doesn't matter what work you're doing. It doesn't matter whether it's music or whether or not you're working in community at various different levels, or if you're manufacturing. There's a sense of insecurity, I think, that everybody has, that sometimes becomes the impediment for them to be able to reach their goals and their dreams. So
I had a conversation with a restaurateur recently, and he was explaining to me how he wished he had musical talent and what an immense gift I have. And I'm trying to be modest, right? I'm like, well, thank you, whatever, because I don't see it that way. I just see it as, it's my job. It's like, some people go to work and do plumbing, some people go to work and do restaurateur, right? It's just it's my task. But I said to him, what was this room before you came here? He was like, oh, it was like a empty office building or whatever. I said, and so you conceived of a restaurant with a certain flair, a certain menu, a certain atmosphere, a certain style of
Right?
cuisine. And then
Yeah.
the plates that I'm eating, you conceived of what proteins you were going to put on, how you were going to treat them, how the staff was going to interact with people, what kind of drinks you were going to serve, and the
Yeah.
bartender conceived, and on and on. And once you make that parallel for people of people's imagination is at play 24/7
24 hours
in our
a day. Yeah,
society,
all the
right?
time. All the
And
time.
really everything we take for granted, great businesses, great restaurants,
Mhm.
great leaders, great educators, great therapists, great plumbers, great electricians, like the technical trades, everything. It's all coming from a place of imagination. Someone had to create from the invention from a place of imagination, and someone has to maintain it from a place of imagination.
Yeah.
And so again, another argument in favor of artistic education, because there are physiological, there's evidence that, like, literally the brain becomes more adept at engaging in those imaginative processes when we engage with something like music or dance or singing or poetry or whatever it may be.
It
So
creates
it's
the maps for all kinds of very,
exactly.
very important things. Critical thinking, all of it. It
all
all
of
comes
it.
from that.
And so it really,
Yeah.
when you think
Yeah.
about it, you're creating a human being. You're cultivating a human being who is going to be a more effective business owner, who's going to be a more effective technician, who's going to be a more effective leader, who's going to be a more effective communicator. And so it's I scoff when people say, well, I'm not creative, or I don't have an imagination, or I'm like, you, my friend, can just be quiet for a moment. I don't tend to like tell people to be quiet, but you're gonna listen. I'm gonna tell you something right now. Sit down.
But I have to say that's a pretty decent life lesson. Nico, I could talk to you all day. I have had such a wonderful conversation with you today. I
Same,
know
thank
that our
you.
listeners has certainly enjoyed what we've heard. We've got two things to do left because we are rounding out the hour now. So I've got to get us ready to say bye-bye for the moment, although
Let's
I
do it.
really don't want to. Two things. Number one, how do people get that information again regarding the Nanaimo Big Band Festival, which is being held Friday, September the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th? Woot, woot. How do they get their tickets?
Well, first of all, you're going to want to check out NanaimoBigBandFest.com. And it spells like it sounds, NanaimoBigBandFest.com, all lowercase. And you can get your tickets through there. There are group passes, there are day passes, and there's a weekend pass. You'll be directed to the Port Theatre website. Our tickets are graciously being sold through the Port Theatre. Thank you, Port Theatre.
Thank you.
So yeah, NanaimoBigBandFest.com. We got Ken Lavigne on September 2nd. We've got Joël Rabu on September 3rd. And we have a whole smattering of artists on September 4th, highlighted by the Vancouver Island Repertory Jazz Orchestra and James Danderfer performing some epic swing clarinet music. So it's just going to be a phenomenal weekend. And the more that we as a community support these kinds of initiatives, the more these things become institutions. And can you imagine if there was a second annual Nanaimo Big Band Festival, or a 10th annual? Dare I say?
I'm ready for that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, then we best get some tickets. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for being our guest today on Act 3. Super glad you've been here.
My
I
pleasure.
always ask this of our guests. And so I probably should have warned you before you and I started our Zoom conversation.
Oh no.
I don't normally throw people under the bus like this. I'm kind of quasi throwing you under for a moment, but hopefully in a great
away.
way.
Toss me in.
I love that in you. I love that openness in you. If you were to imbibe something on our community, right? If you were to leave behind that lasting teachable moment, that thought that, should be shared to anybody who's listening to this broadcast, what would that look like to you?
Just a reminder that music is everywhere, and all you have to do is reach out. All you have to do is reach out and scoop it up, whether that means whistling on the sidewalk, whether it means tapping your foot, sitting, waiting for your bus, whether it means putting on your favorite record or checking out your favorite band or listening to your favorite symphony. Just a reminder that music is always there. It's always accessible when the days are hard, when the days are long, when life throws you a curveball. You have an eternal, and fully committed friend in music, and it's always there. You just have to reach out and scoop some up.
Wonderful. Well, I have to tell you, that's great abuse and advice. And hopefully we're going to be cranking up some tunes right here on CHLY 101.7 FM. Nico Rhodes has been our guest today. Thank you so much again for joining us. I look forward to having many more conversations with you down the line. And it's wonderful to reconnect with you. And also just, to have such a new festival, such a wonderful opportunity for us to be together, enjoy some tunes, listen to some classics. Fabulous. Thanks
so
again,
much.
everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Nico. And we'll see you next time on Act 3. Once again, don't forget to get your tickets as well for Shine 2022. Take good care of you. Bye for now.